Dear students, welcome to this lecture. Today, my topic for deliberation is Women and Development Administration. The main objectives for this lecture are: the lecture will try to focus on empowerment and various strategies of empowerment of women. The lecture will also try to analyze how the image of women is changed from a victim to the agent of change. And finally, the lecture will try to analyze women's role in administration. So first, let's start with the introduction. And I quote, "You can tell the condition of a nation by looking at the status of its women," unquote, is said by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. And I quote, "Development, if not engendered, is endangered," was the slogan coined by Dr. Mehboob ul Haq, the progenitor of the series of human development reports in the Human Development Report of 1995. Empowerment is the key, and for that they need educational access and a voice in governance. Women so empowered can take an active role in ending hostilities, first and foremost by raising the next generation. If educated and enlightened, they will be about to teach their children the importance of dialogue, opening channels to present their positions, but not in a combative manner. Women can be empowered in many ways: socially, economically, politically, and legally. In the discussion on women's empowerment, gender equality and gender equity in terminology is interrelated. In contrast to other terms, women's empowerment relates to a process, a progression from one state to another. In addition, empowerment includes agency, in which women themselves are actors in the empowerment process. They must not only be able to make a decision, but be aware of their rights to make it. So students, let's have a look on the strategies of women empowerment. Empowerment is a process to increase individuals' intrinsic task motivation. In the context of women executives, empowerment will mean enhancing intrinsic motivation to involve in administrative ventures. Women have to be made compatible of both social and economic worlds and empower them towards self-confidence and self-reliance. To motivate women to come out of their traditional perceptions and responsibilities, some psychological and social changes have to be inculcated. Women have the need to put more efforts to change people's attitudes in the society at large. Women have to be stimulated to take right kind of action at right time. Women need to make decisions for them, and they have to believe in their own power. Successful women executives in the field of administration have to help other women to overcome their problems and further develop their career development. To become the source of stimulation, the women as well as the society are to be highly motivated, and stimulation is partially a responsibility of organization, non-government, government, and partially women themselves. All women executives should join together and form cooperative societies to see their ability and caliber being used effectively. Promotion of women executives as an important and valued component has to be taken care of through the organizational policies to provide active support. Women executives related research and application from time to time have to be documented and used to provide supportive guidance when needed. Though it's necessary to help them to initiate their executive development, a constant follow-up and liberal financial support should be ensured to enable them in functioning and smooth running of their enterprises. To overcome the problem of promotion of women executives and also the problem of initial training and counseling, the government has to give a helping hand. Now, students, let's have a look on gender and participation. Institutions need to mainstream gender awareness and participatory approaches into their own work to ensure that development is truly equitable. Critical voices about participatory initiatives have focused largely on mismatches between over-ambitious aims and poor practice. One such breach is the one between claimed social inclusiveness and the reality of gender bias. Despite the aim of participatory development to involve people in development that affects them directly, little attention is paid to understanding who wants to participate, what makes their participation possible, and what is in it for them. Often, participatory processes have left women on the sidelines, along with the gender issues that shape their lives. Combining gender awareness and participatory approaches can be used to unlock men and women's voices for gender redistributive change and gender sensitive program and policy development. Empowerment oriented work requires methods that can make social transformation a principal goal. Yet, they do not expose or generate conflicts that increase the vulnerability of marginalized groups. Stimulating empowerment in ways that women and or men might not support not only threatens to expose vulnerable people to conflict, but will also determine the extent to which they wish to engage in a process that may draw attention to deeply rooted conflicts. Participation is only inclusive of gendered views if those who drive the process want it to be, or if those involved demand it to be. Gender sensitive and participatory techniques can help translate their intentions into practice. Recent decades have witnessed an international trend towards democratic decentralization, the shifting of power, functions, responsibility, and accountability from national level to the grassroots communities. In order to strengthen local governance, a significant contribution of this decentralization is to provide constitutional status to women in local governments and enhance their political participation. A clear example is the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act of India, 1993, which transferred power to people in decentralized Panchayati Raj institutions, PRI, local government institutions, with 1/3 reservation of seats for women. This paved the way for women to exercise their political rights in local governance, thereby gradually giving a new thrust to more women-friendly grassroots governance. However, it has not necessarily enabled them to influentially define priorities or address gender issues. The Society for Participatory Research in Asia, PRIA, a non-profit development organization based in New Delhi, has developed innovative approaches to enhance the participation of women. Women's entry into provincial politics has, to a certain extent, challenged the social stigmas related to their ability to exercise power and altered the texture of daily politics by injecting different values and perspectives, as well as a different atmosphere within panchayats. Although it's important not to assume that women display more integrity than men. It has been suggested that political administration has improved because women are more accessible to the community than men, more transparent and more effective in fighting grassroots corruption. They have also drawn attention to issues such as education, water, sanitation, fuel, and alcohol abuse issues, which are generally not focused on by men. Ensuring women's political participation through reservations is a first important step, but much needs to be done to bring about a fundamental change in society. NGOs, CSOs, and women's organizations need to increasingly network and share experiences on working with the government to increase dialogue on gender and quality of women's participation within the PRI system. Systematic and sustained efforts to motivate women to actively participate in local governance need to be accompanied by strong information and knowledge support through training and innovative communication, as well as participatory bottom-up process. More attention needs to be focused on sensitizing men as an integral part of such programs. Without these, the promise of women's political participation offered by reservation of seats will not be effectively realized. It makes sense for poverty elevation interventions to reflect complex and diverse local experiences of poverty if they are to be credible, relevant, and effective. But this does not always happen. With the introduction of government-led poverty reduction strategies papers, PRSPs, the World Bank has acknowledged the importance of civil society in formulating national policy to tackle poverty. PRSPs are supposed to be based on participatory consultation and planning processes, yet specifically design these processes to address gender biases that limit the participation of different women and men in national policy processes and to integrate gender analysis into poverty diagnosis poses a major challenge. In order to assess debt relief, several countries have already advanced in the PRSP process. According to Tony Burden, policy advisor with Oxfam, and I quote, "In the 14 PRSPs completed, gender as a cross-cutting issue has been addressed in variable ways and generally in a weak manner," unquote. Major decisions continue to be taken by the IMF, World Bank, and governments, whereas the voices of civil society actors have generally been marginalized. However, according to the European Network on Debt and Development, EURODAD, in some countries, the PRSP process has resulted in higher levels of civil society government interaction than in the past. Now, students, let's have a look on the women in administration. Every man has the job, and every job has the man. If we see the role of women, every woman has the traditionally defined role, socially directed job description for her. Women in them have many personalities and role models combined. They are mother, daughter, sister, and wife. Usually, we are used to see her in these conventional roles, and seeing her in roles other than conventional one is certainly deviation. But the present day context, women have started coming out of their interiors to join stream of the society, equally with men. This is a history of transformation of the society and demand of the day. The history of mankind is a history of injury and usurpation on the part of men towards women. History repeats itself till today, and the law looked helpless. Legislation stunned into silence. Women lulled into her body and soul, denied justice, social, economic, and political. With the change in the position of women in the society, to a greater extent, her role models have also started changing. Now, women of today are not only governed by men, but also women also govern men. The role model by women at home as wife, mother, and sister to a great extent are nothing less than their administrative role. To a great extent applied with their informal education in administration of home. In broader sense, their role as manager of home is nothing short of administrative role performed by them. So, the art of governing by women begin at home. In support of this conception, with relevance to the present day context, we should look to the past and the history of this country and the world at large. Take the example of Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi, who assumed the throne on demise of her husband to defend her kingdom against the invaders with chivalry, courage, and administrative acumen. The capacity of women as administrator both in pre and post-independence era coming down to the history, we may start with Srimati Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, Padmaja Naidu, and the stalwart Indira Gandhi. The position of women administration may certainly be discussed with special reference to their participation and performance in various administrative services of central and state cadres. The constitutional posts held by the women in IAS, IFS, IPS, and also the state civil services, besides the administrative positions occupied by them in judiciary and various other services in the administrative hierarchy of countless departments ranging from top to the ground level. If we look with impartial attitudes and gender discrimination, we have enough reasoning and rationales to justify the administrative capacity of women, which on many occasions they outperform men. In present day scenario, the role of administrator is more of developmental nature than that of clearing files with authoritative dictations. In a democratic country like India and the world at large, the role of administrator has assumed greater significance, with specific role to be performed, laying more emphasis on implementation of the policy decisions of the government. And women have more responsibility to perform as an administrator. The presence of women in administrative position has not exceeded even 5%, but it's believed that in the years to come, the share of women entrants would increase. It's very pertinent to mention here that in all India cadres and also in state cadres, in most of the years, the top position goes to women candidates. This amply indicates their capacity to compete with men in no-favor manners. The fact of chairing the National Commission for Women, vice chancellors of universities, important positions in academic and scientific institutions successfully by women are the few of the many which may be exemplified. In a democratic country like India, many a times we see women in dual roles, both as a politicians and administrator. Very often, these positions becomes challenging for women to rise above the dictates of the bureaucrats, who always wants to tow the boat in their desired direction. It should be obligatory to the society to ensure that women occupies at least 50% of the positions in administration to wash out the conventional inertia of the society to underestimate the capacity of women in administration. Irrespective of the administrative position held by women, her dual role, either as mother or as wife, never ends. Psychologically, women cannot be separated from her husband and children at home. Sometimes there may be some reflection of their anxieties at workplace in the discharge of her responsibilities. As such, women who are in administration jobs require the wholehearted mental and associated support from the members of the family. Women who become victim of domestic violence in any form can never discharge her duties properly. In a free country like India, we are yet to ensure free movement of women when we are discussing position of women in administration. We are yet to treat women as more a person and not as a weaker sex or an object of enjoyment and exploitation. On the other side of the coin, women themselves are required to establish themselves not only in administration but also at home. They should not always cry foul to earn the sympathy which can never be won by force and coercion. Great achievement for women both at home and in administration will be there only when women can create a position where they become inseparable at home, also at workplace, and their absence create vacuum always felt by others. Women with their inherent qualities can win over others and sail smoothly if other conditions remain conducive. To develop administrative acumen, proper education, varied knowledge, and exposure are very much essential to be acquired to develop requisite skill to run the administration. Women should not be contented that they can sail through only with their charisma. It's observed in many cases that women decorating the chair of administration succumb to the wishes of the subordinates and also higher ups only because they exhibit their weakness. To stabilize their position, women should equip themselves properly to deal with eventualities placed before them. Women would lose their position if they become victim of merry of others only because she is women. Information from administrative circles and general feelings of the public suggests that women in administration are less corrupt than their male counterpart. When corruption is at nosedive level, it's only women's larger participation in administration that can make the administration corruption free to a greater extent. Position of women in administrative cadres should not be a decorative one. On the contrary, it should be challenging. Men and women are complementary to each other. Progress of the society largely depends on the representation of women in equal manner as that of men. And for this reason, the responsibility of the society in general and men in particular to prop up the cause of the women to ensure greater and larger participation and presence in administration. When there is proposition to enact legislation to enhance the representation of women in political arena by increasing the seat reservation to 50% from 30%, but the present day position of elected representatives in both parliament and assembly is far less satisfactory. In many instances, the elected representatives are merely the dummy of their husbands. The cause for this dismal picture can be attributed to the corruption and muscle regime in politics and also the psychological barriers of men who do not, in many instances, want to see women in their equal position. In rural India, the position is far more alarming. The elected women members are represented by their husbands, while the women representative remains busy in the household chores. For example, in India, we have the examples of Sarpanch Patis, who are not in power, but on behalf of their wives, they exercise their power. This is a much unfortunate state of affairs, which can be reversed only by empowering women with proper education and administrative skills and changing the social outlook. The Constitution of India guarantees equal right and protection of women with that of men. The difference in treatment by the state is totally prohibited by the Constitution. In spite of this constitutional guarantee, the state is required to enact laws to stop harassment of women at workplace and elsewhere. For the equality status guaranteed by the Constitution is a myth to millions of women of this country. Available figures indicate that women become the victim of domestic violence in every 20 minutes and one rape in every 43 minutes. This is an analysis of the report of the National Crime Records Bureau, Ministry of Home Affairs. If we look to the position of women in administration, we must look behind, assess the present position, and draw strategy for the future. When women cover half of the population and women's contribution is more than 50% in countries' agricultural product and other areas also, and when their indirect participation is augmenting gross domestic product to the extent than 50%, we shall have to ponder about their participation in administration. Now students, let's finally conclude this lecture. The question of empowerment has to be addressed politically for equal share of power and space in the decision-making process at all levels, from panchayats to parliament. In this lecture, we have tried to see some of the milestones in empowerment of women taken up in the political system of India. Women are involved in all social and cultural activities. Due to women's vital role in production and reproduction, many programs and policies targeted at the community have their greatest impact on women. Yet, this gender-specific impact is too often ignored by planners, overlooked by field workers, and bypassed in project implementation. It's well documented that development programs that ignore women either fail or have negative social impact, as they are based on an inadequate and only partial understanding of the society. Women have often played leadership roles or taken the lead in promoting an environmental ethic, judicious resource use, and reusing and recycling resources to minimize waste and excessive consumption. This is a shift towards the issues of gender equity over the years due to change in the organizational and institutional mechanisms. There is a reshaping of women's role. The image of a woman is changed from a victim to the agent of change. There is a cautious convergence of gender and participation at all the levels, that is, from grassroots level to the formulation of policy. Strategic actions are being taken to involve women actively in environment, in decision making, in integrating gender concerns in policies, and assessing the impact of development and environment policies on women at national, regional, and international levels. So dear students, that brings us to the end of the lecture. I look forward to our next meeting where we can explore a new and exciting topic. Until then, take care and goodbye.